My name is Emily. I'm 32 years old. I've been married to Chris for 7 years, and we have a beautiful 5-year-old son named Ethan. If someone had told me that my seemingly perfect life would shatter in a single moment, I wouldn't have believed them. But life has a way of blindsiding you when you least expect it. I met Chris during our college years at the University of Michigan. He was charming, ambitious, and had this natural charisma that made everyone gravitate toward him. I remember the first time he smiled at me. It felt like the rest of the world faded away. We were inseparable from that moment on. Our friends called us the golden couple. He was my best friend, my biggest supporter, and the person I thought I'd grow old with. The first few years of our marriage were a dream. We built a life together, moved into a cozy home in the suburbs of Chicago, and when Ethan was born, it felt like our family was complete. Chris was doing well in his career, and I had taken a break from teaching to focus on raising Ethan. Life wasn't perfect, but it was ours, and I was happy. Or at least I thought I was. Over the last few months, something changed. Chris started working late more often. He'd always had a demanding job in finance, but this felt different. "Another meeting," he'd say. Or, "I have to take a client out for drinks." At first, I didn't think much of it. But then there was his phone. He never used to be protective of it, but now it was always on silent and always with him. I'd catch glimpses of him texting late at night, his face illuminated by the screen in the dark. When I asked who he was talking to, he'd shrug and say, "Just work stuff." But something in my gut told me otherwise. One Friday evening, he told me he'd be late again. "Big client meeting," he said. Ethan was asleep, and I was sitting alone in the living room when I noticed Chris's work bag on the table. His phone was right there, buzzing silently. My heart raced. I'd never invaded his privacy before, but something told me I needed to know. With trembling hands, I picked it up and unlocked it. There it was, a message from someone named Heather. The text read, "Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again." My vision blurred as I stared at the words. Who was Heather? What was she talking about? My hands shook as I opened their message thread. The texts were endless, inside jokes, flirty comments, and then the pictures. One in particular stopped my heart. It was Chris and Heather, sitting on the edge of a hotel bed. His arm was around her, and he was smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt like it was caving in. How could he do this to me? To Ethan? To us? I put the phone down and stared into the darkness, my mind racing. Should I confront him? Should I wait? A part of me wanted to scream at him the moment he walked through the door, while another part of me wanted to pretend I hadn't seen anything. When Chris came home that night, I couldn't hold it in. "Who is Heather?" I asked, my voice shaking. His face went pale, and for a moment, he just stared at me, frozen. "What are you talking about?" he finally said. I grabbed his phone and showed him the messages. Who is she, Chris?" He stammered, tried to deny it, but the evidence was undeniable. Finally, he muttered, "It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything." A mistake? My world was crumbling, and he called it a mistake? I told him to leave. That night, as he packed a bag and walked out, I sat on our bed, replaying every moment of our relationship in my mind. How did we get here? How did I not see this coming? The days that followed were a blur. Chris called constantly, begging for forgiveness. "It was stupid," he said. "It was a moment of weakness. Let's work through this." But how do you fix something that's broken beyond repair? How do you trust someone who's betrayed you in the worst way? Ethan didn't understand what was happening. "Where's Daddy?" he asked one morning. I forced a smile and said, "He's working, sweetheart." But inside, I was falling apart. My parents came over to help, and I confided in my mom. She hugged me tightly and said, "Emily, you're stronger than this. You deserve better." I wanted to believe her, but I felt like I'd failed, not just as a wife, but as a mother and a woman. After weeks of soul-searching, I made the hardest decision of my life. I filed for divorce. It wasn't just about Chris's betrayal, it was about reclaiming my self-worth. I wanted Ethan to grow up knowing that his mother was strong, that she didn't settle for less than she deserved. The divorce process was grueling. Chris tried to make amends, even suggested therapy, but I knew in my heart that I could never look at him the same way again. A year has passed since that night. Ethan and I have found a new rhythm. Some days are harder than others. There are nights when I lie awake, wondering if I could have done something differently. But I've learned that Chris's choices don't define me. They don't diminish my worth or the love I gave. I'm sharing my story because I know I'm not alone. If you've been betrayed, know this. You are not the problem. You are stronger than you think, and you deserve love, respect, and honesty. Life doesn't end with betrayal. It begins anew. And every ending is a chance to rebuild.